In this video, we're going to talk about math, but we're not going to teach you how to add and subtract or multiply and divide. Instead, we'll outline the minimum math skills that you will need to work in a machine shop. At the end of this video, if you feel you need more help, it's up to you to find the resources. For most of these basic skills, a simple Google or YouTube search is a great place to start. Okay, let's get started. The topics we're going to cover in this video are how to read a tape measure, how to read a steel rule or scale, converting decimals to fractions and fractions to decimals, how to read decimal places, converting inch to metric and metric to inch, and how to read a thread callout. Let's start with the basics. When you're operating a machine, you will often be tasked with running a batch of parts. So let's say you have a job that is 250 parts total, and you can run 50 every day. Once you've established that you can run 50 parts a day, your supervisor may ask, when will the job be complete? If you do 50 parts in a day, 250 divided by 50 is 5, which means you can do the entire job in 5 days. You will need to have basic tape measure reading skills. Now, each job requires a specific size raw material, so you need to be able to identify the correct size bar stock. For the job I'm doing today, I need a piece of aluminum that is 1 inch by 3.5 inches. So I'm gonna bring my tape measure out, and I think this is the piece here. Sure enough, 3.5 inches by 1 inch. I found the right piece of stock. Now, to read this tape measure, you need to understand and be familiar with the divisions on the tape measure itself. You need to know that these are 1/4 inch increments, these are 1/2 inch, these lines here are 1/8 inch, and the smallest lines represent 1/16 of an inch. This is what is commonly called a scale or a steel rule. When you look around a typical machine shop, you'll probably see a scale on nearly every workbench or in the pocket of every machinist. They're used throughout the day for many different purposes, checking material size, length of tools, and so on. Now, there are two types of scales that are common when dealing with inches. A fractional scale, which is usually in 1/64 and 1/32 increments, and a decimal version. Given the choice, always go with the decimal version, since that is how machine shops communicate dimensions. You'll notice the text here on the face of the scale, 100ths and tenths. That simply means that there are 100 lines for every inch here, and down here, 10 lines for every inch. Now let's talk about how we express these in a machine shop environment. These lines represent 10,000ths of an inch, or 0.01. And these lines represent 100,000ths of an inch, or 0.1. With a little practice, you'll be able to use your scale to get some surprisingly accurate measurements. While your tape measure and your scale might be showing you fractions, the machine shop world nearly always works and talks in decimals. In some cases, fractions and decimals are even used interchangeably. For example, you might hear a machinist say, "I need a 3/8 drill." When you look at a drawing, you don't see 3/8 anywhere, so you need to know that 3/8 and 0.375 are the same thing. Now, calculating the decimal from a fraction is simple. You just divide the small number by the large number, and in this case, 3 divided by 8 equals 0.375. Now, you won't have to convert the other way as often, but having a fraction decimal chart nearby to refer to is always a good idea. Many tooling vendors will supply these, or you can easily find one online and print it out. Now that we've touched on decimal places, we'll go a little deeper on that topic. You need to know how to read and how to say the numbers that you see on a drawing. First, we'll cover inches. This number is referred to as 1.1. It's pretty simple and pretty obvious, but it might also be referred to as an inch and a hundredth. This number you will either call 1.01 or 1 inch 10 thousandths, or even a shortened version of that, 1 inch 10 thou. For this number, you will either say 1.001 or an inch and a thousandths, or even an inch and a thou. And finally, we call this 1 inch and 1/10,000ths, or an inch and a tenth for short. 0.0001 is often referred to in the machine shop world as a tenth. So to recap, in a machine shop environment, this is how you will likely hear these dimensions expressed. This is machine shop slang. This is 1 inch 100,000ths, or 1 inch 100 thou. 1 inch 10,000ths, or 1 inch 10 thou. 1 inch 1,000th, or 1 inch 1 thou. And 1 inch and 1/10,000th, or 1 inch 1/10. The metric system is used in most of the world, of course, but it can also be found in the US, so you'll need to be familiar with it. When the metric system is in use, the size of a part is usually shown in millimeters. So if you see a number like this, that dimension is 50.8 millimeters. In the metric world, tolerances are referred to as microns. A micron is short for micrometer and is 1/1,000,000th of a meter, or 0.001 millimeters. Now you need to be able to convert inches to millimeters and the other way around. Converting is simple if you remember one thing. 1 inch equals 25.4 millimeters. Remember the number 25.4. So take your 50.8 millimeter example, divide it by 25.4, and that equals 2. 50.8 millimeters is the same as 2 inches. To go the other way, multiply the inch number by 25.4, so 2 times 25.4 is 50.8. 2 inches is the same as 50.8 millimeters. The last topic we'll cover in this video is how to read thread callouts. Let's take a look at some examples of several thread callouts, and I'll explain. The first number represents the diameter of the threaded hole, and the second number represents what we call pitch. This means that the thread is 1/4 inch, or 0.250 inches in diameter, meaning a 1/4 inch diameter bolt will thread in, and there are 20 threads per inch. This means that the thread is 3/8 of an inch in diameter, or 0.375, and there are 16 threads for every inch of hole depth. Now for metric, it's a little different. This means that an 8 millimeter bolt threads into the hole, and there is 1 millimeter between each thread. Now the basic difference between inch and metric thread callouts is that the thread pitch for inch sizes count the number of threads per inch, whereas for metric threads, the pitch is stated as the spacing between each thread. Now this might sound a little confusing, but don't worry. If you're asked to check threaded holes on a part, you will usually be given a thread gauge to check them. You will not be counting the number of threads. Okay, now let's summarize. To work in the CNC machining world, you will need basic math skills, be able to read a tape measure, convert decimal to fraction and vice versa, read and understand dimensions and decimal places, be able to convert inch to metric and metric to inch, be familiar with the scale, and understand what a thread callout means. Having these skills when you apply for a job in a machine shop will put you at a big advantage over the competition. Thanks for watching.